Well, if you go back to 2000, 2001, the very early days of the idea of Itasca, what was happening around the state was that big companies in this region, which have always been the hallmark, the linchpin of the civic engagement here, they were becoming more global, and they were attracting leadership teams from all over the world. And so what was happening was our hometown hero companies were thinking about many parts of the world beyond just Minnesota. And so there was this concern that what would happen to our region, because we had been so blessed for so long to have these companies who cared so much about the region. As they globalized, would their focus be here?
It took a year to try to understand if the myth that large multinational corporations didn't have the affinity or the loyalty or the commitment to their hometown that they once did when there was a individual family that might have controlled the company. And that was a myth, because we found every one of the companies actually cared a lot about their hometown.
When I was the CEO of Carlson Companies, really, I was in charge of 48,000 covered lives. And I knew that we were only as good as our community, and that we had to somehow commit to the place we live, the place our employees live.
There was such a divide between Minneapolis and St. Paul that if it was somehow we could just fill in the river and have Minneapolis and St. Paul collaborate as one, the impact we would have would be unbelievable. And that's really what, in some respects, Itasca was built on.
We're fragmented. It's really about the region and what can we do to elevate each other, and what can we do to tackle the long-term challenges that every region has, and do that in a way that's outside of the political process.
I think we all had the feeling that the Twin Cities, the region, was an absolute gem, but it was not widely known across the country or the world. We were sort of flyover country. I remember reading in Fortune magazine that we had more Fortune 500 companies based here per capita than any other metropolitan area in the United States.
I think it was a combination of understanding what was coming and how we needed to be prepared. And we wanted to keep these businesses in our area and keep them thriving, because that's what makes Minnesota a really innovative and great place in so many ways.
The problems and opportunities that we face civically can't be addressed by one sector alone. Not the business community, not the public sector, not the not-profit sector, not even philanthropy. We need to work together in order to get the best out of all, in order to make sure that we are the community that we should be.
Larry Perlman came to my office at McKnight and said he'd really like to try to jumpstart that process in a slightly different form. And what he hoped to do was to create sort of a business-led conversation around the future of the Minneapolis-St. Paul regional economy. And I said, that's terrific. How can I help? I assume you're looking for underwriting. He said, no, I would love for McKnight and you personally to convene that group and to get the process started. So I said, well, why don't I take a half step? Why don't I get 5 or 6 of the most thoughtful people I know from the business community together, and we can just sort of sit down and try to scope out what a process like this might look like. So I did. I called up 6 or 7 of my closest business colleagues and asked if they would come to a breakfast and talk about what this might look like. They agreed. We talked over breakfast, and it became really clear that it was just enormously complicated.
I was actually invited by Rip Rapson at the very, very beginning. And in the wake of that meeting, the participants said, how can we continue this discussion? And Rip invited myself and a handful of other people to 2 lunches. Those 2 lunches have grown into 20 years of meetings every Friday morning. The very first meeting in the fall of 2003 with the governor, with the leaders of our major corporations, the passion in the room, the interest in this kind of work was palpable.
I think we tapped into something because that first meeting with the governor, we had a group of CEOs who really came with some commitment to be engaged in ways that they hadn't been before.
Well, I remember walking into the very first Itasca meeting, and I looked around and I thought, oh, gee, the big boys finally invited me to the table. Because I was a mayor when the state was moving in a different direction, when the business community was pretty scattered, and I didn't really know where my partnerships were going to be, but they were in that room. I would look at the governor, and we weren't necessarily in great partnership at that time, but we had a whole lot of people sitting around making sure that we acted nice to each other. And it became a place where not only could I get a lot done, but I could let down my guard and admit what we hadn't solved and find partners who could help fix it.
Itasca was really constructed around positional power. It was finding the people who had these jobs that a lot of power and influence, and wanting to support them to be active and effective civic leaders.
The wonderful thing about Itasca is that it really did start as kind of a convening to see what could be done to create more business leader-led civic initiatives, civic sensibility.
Civic engagement is people with no intent for attribution, no extra time, but making and carving it out for this. Have the passion to talk about something that hasn't happened yet. And so civic engagement actually is Itasca.
I think one of the largest challenges we had when Itasca was first formed was the issue of, do we really need another organization? The CEOs, the mayors, the governor, the president of the university, the chancellor at MSP, to convince them that there was really a purpose for this organization to exist, that there was a cause that this organization needed to address.
We've always made our financial contributions entirely voluntary. We've always had a minimum of formal structure, as in virtually none. We are blessed by having the support of McKinsey Company from the beginning as facilitators and research staff, as it were. It has been a volunteer effort, and people have to renew their commitment to it.
When Itasca was launched, 20 years ago, McKinsey was at the table. And we were at the table because individually and collectively as an office, we thought it was critical to be so. If we couldn't, as participants in our community, support this, what else would we support?
The word trust, I think, is the key element that allowed Itasca to succeed in the beginning and what it has allowed to have it continue to succeed over the last 20 years.
When we came out of the original sort of organizing meetings for Itasca, we had an agenda around 6 issues, which now looking back was absurd to think that we could take on 6 issues. We're gonna take on transportation, we're gonna take on early childhood education, we're gonna take on university business partnership, like all these issues. And in 3 years, we did something meaningful on, I'd say 5 of the 6. We really made progress. And it's because of that at the end of 3 years, people said we shouldn't stop, that we're making enough progress. We should find a way to keep this going.
We say, are we doing the right things? Is it worth it? And we've asked the question over 20 years, and it keeps coming up with yes, and let's be relevant.